Okay, well, it's skate time of year, Thornback Ray skate, and I like to use a bait that's below my weight on the seabed. So the pulley pennels and that are out for a little while. I want to put my bait on the bottom, and I have to use a up and over rig or a drop down rig, and so that I can get my bait clipped right behind my lead, which for streamlining and casting, which you can't do with a normal, say, running ledger. So I'm going to show you how to tie them both today. They're really simple. If you can tie a pulley pennel, you can tie one of these. I'm going to make it a bit shorter than I'd normally do, just so you can see me, so I can show you easier on camera. If they're like 5 foot long, it's difficult to see. So first of all, I'm going to tie the drop down, and what I'm going to need for that is a bait clip, weight holder bait clip, whatever your choice, imp, splashdown, whatever, or even if you use the lead ones, the ones with the breakaways with them built in. I'm going to use this one today to show you. I want one of these, which is a smaller version of that. I use the large ones for my bait, and I'll use this smaller one. Pulley bead, swivel, and a couple of beads. First things, tie on your swivel. That if this was a pulley pennel, you'd be attaching your hook line to this. Okay, bead, pulley bead. Now the part of the drop down rig is this smaller clip, and you just pass that on the line, so that's free to move on your line. Then a bead, and then your weight holder of choice. Up to you which one you use. Okay, so basically you've got a pulley rig, but on the line I've got this clip, so there's pulley bead and this clip that's free to move up and down the line. Okay, now I'm going to tie my hook snood to this, whereas in our pulley rig you tie it to that swivel. You're going to tie your hook snood to that. I use a different colour line, and it wants to be, your hook snood wants to be about the length of your rig, same length as your rig, a little bit shorter. So you tie onto there, okay, not the bead, not the swivel. I'm just using just quick blood knots today to for speed, not for anything else. I'd normally use uni knots, but okay. So there's your hook snood. Tie on your hook. You can use a pennel rig if you want, or you can use one of these this new fashion, this dongle rig. I'm going to tie one of them in a second and show you one of them. So there's your pulley. There's your pulley rig. Put your weight on. So that's simple, and your bait's going to be fishing below that. But when you cast, what you do is you bring this clip up the line, and you use the small bit of that clip over your swivel, into the eye of your swivel, like so. Into the eye of your swivel, and then put your hook on the bait clip, get is what looks like a pulley rig. So your bait's going to be nicely behind your weight streamline for your casting, but when it hits the water and this clip comes out of this swivel and your line drops down and your bait is fishing hard on the bottom below your weight. So that's one way of doing it. And if you do, I'm going to tie you an up and over, which means you can have double the length of this. So if you have, say, a 5-foot trace, you can get up to a 10-foot snood, which I think is a bit excessive myself, but I do use, say, a 4-foot, and I can have a 6-foot snood, which you can't really do conveniently with just a plain pennel, plain pulley rig. So that's how that works. So it's just a pulley rig. Then you put that clip in there, the eye of your swivel. Look on the bait clip. So you can see how that's lovely for casting. Drops out and your bait will drop down below your weight. Perfect. It works really well, actually. It works really well. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to show you how to tie a dongle onto this. Now, dongle, I always called them a South African hair rig. I thought they were a thing from South Africa where they used big baits. That's the finished, what it's going to look like. I just used £100 braid, and I tie on a split ring onto the braid. Just a double knot in this stuff. You don't need any fancy knot. Pull it nice and tight. And then I trim it off. And melt the tag end. Melt the tag end down. So that's a ring tied onto £100 braid. Then I'll tie myself a series of knots, 2 or 3 knots in the braid, just over and knots. 1, 2, 3. Then I decide on the length of what my baits are going to be. A nice piece of bluey. That's so long, perfect. Half a bluey, so. And the knots on there. I'm going to melt this end to a blob. Then you take your circle hook. I bend these, just make a loop like that on the end, makes it easier. And you want this. You're going to put this on your hook, and you want it to be in the near the centre of the braid as possible, like so. And then you just pull it down over the barb. That's going nowhere. And you're going to tie your bait, whip your bluey onto that, and the knots help stop the bluey sliding down. The ring is going to go onto your bait clip. Now, if you're going to use circle, you don't have to use circle hooks. You can use J hooks or octopus hooks, chinnoos, whatever. But if you're going to use the circle, you've got to use a different type of knot. You've got to tie a loop, like so, a loop knot. I just tie a double knot, basically. X, like so. Pull that tight. But what that does is your hook, you can't tie the hook on with a uni or a blood knot. You can, there is a snell knot, which you must come through from this side, and you snell it. You must come through from there, and you can snell the hook on, which does, what that does is it then forms an angle, helps form the circle, because the snell knot hold the line out like that. But I just use this loop. It allows the circle hook to move. The bait's on there, and when you casting, when you put the ring on the bait clip like that for casting, so that the hits the water, falls off. The good thing about this is we all know skate, Fawneys skate, they take the baits really deep, and you know, we don't want to be taking the larger females, and it does, you know, damages them. They'll take all that bait down. With this rig, you're not going to harm the fish. This is going to be in the lip 99% of the time. This will be in the lip or the scissors, and the bait can be right down in the gut, but there's nothing to stop you just pulling it out of the fish. You're not going to damage the fish. We can send the females back, especially. I don't take females. £5 male, nothing else. But on a good night, you might have half a dozen. No one wants to take half a dozen home. Just take yourself one over the table. This allows you no harm to the fish. So they're a good thing to use. I've heard people starting talking about them, but I always thought they were called South African hair rigs, and they're being called a dongle rig. But that's basically just replace any of your hook snoods. If you're using the pulley rig, drop down rig, up and over rig, replace your hook with one of these. Give it a go. As I say, they're cheap to make, they're easy to make, don't hurt the fish. You get good release from your bait clips because the ring comes off, you know, nice. Your bait's like that, so your hook point's always out of your bait. You're never going to get your hook point masked because your bait's down here, so you always got that. You know, problem with the big baits is that sometimes your hook point gets masked in the bait, and this stops that. Right, I'm now going to tie a up and over. Okay, so the other way of getting a bait that's for casting is nicely tucked in behind your weight, but when you're fishing is hard on the bottom below the weight, and that's the up and over. And the thing about this rig is you can get yourself a really long snood. So you're going to need one of these, the clip that I used on the drop down actually, so that's the smaller clip. Your weight holder bait clip of your choice, up to you which one, that one. Just your swivel, standard swivel, and 2 beads. So it's same as the pulley rig but without the pulley bead. So this one, the smaller clip on the top. I think they actually make special things you can buy, up and over rig, with springs and everything in them. But I don't see the need really. So tie that on one end, a bead, and bloody snips I use. They bend they blunt the end of your line. It won't go through the beads. And you get the shapes, and that's the end of that. So the beads on, my bait clip, weight holder of choice, another bead, and swivel. And the swivel is where you're going to be tying your hook length to. Okay. As I say, you can tie your rig bodies to whatever length you want, And basically the hook length, the snood from this can be almost double the length of your rig body. So if that's 5 foot from that's tied to your leader, if that's 5 feet, your hook length can be twice that. So you could be using a 10-foot trace if you wanted, which is something, you know, you use that in the boats, but you didn't use them on the beach because you can't cast them. But with this, it does help. So you can tie on your hook length to that swivel, like you would on a pennel rig, really, a pulley rig. And you can use this as a pennel, so you can have 1 and then again 2, so you've got that. The hook snood is double the length of your rig body, or just short of it. Tie your hook on, or hooks. I usually use a pennel rig or one of these dongles, dongle rig, pennel rig. Okay, and what that allows you to do, put your weight on, and this is why it's called the up and over, because you come up, up, put your line over that clip like so. This will be to your shock leader, this bit, up over there on that clip like that, and then bloody hooks and everything. I miss a fish though. Into your bait holder, so your bait's nicely behind the lead, all pulled tight on the pulley system, so it's going to stay there, but when it hits the water, you've got a super long snood hard on the bottom. That's the drop down. Or you can use the pennel rig, dongle rig, or just your single hook. I like these for fishing for plaice actually. Gives you a nice line, some green and black beads, a small hook. So it doesn't have to be for the big fish, but certain fish like it on the bottom. And there it is. Up, line goes over the clip, and down to your bait clip. The pulley system is working down the bottom rather than a pulley rig. The pulley's working up the top, it's working down the bottom here to keep your bait nicely held tight and flush for casting. So there you go. Up, over the clip, and there, the up and over rig. And your bait's fishing nicely on the bottom. As I say, you can use that. You can use the dongle with that as well. The same system. If you have the dongle on that as your hook snood. If you are going for fawnies, these are a good idea, because as I say, it doesn't damage them. They do take it down deep, the fawnies, and pull it straight out of their mouths. No damage to the fish. Return them big females, guys, so that we can all have a go at catching them. Thanks very much. All the best.